where KCRA 3 investigates a $1 billion project that has been shrouded in secrecy. The work on the Capitol Annex has been going on for years now, but public updates, they've been hard to come by. Thanks for being with us. I'm Gulston Dar.
And I'm Edie Lambert. KCRA 3's Ashley Zavala joins us with her latest efforts to find out how your tax dollars are being spent.
Edie and Gulston, this is a story you will only see here on KCRA 3, and we spent 3 months digging into this issue. We've learned thousands of people have signed non-disclosure agreements to keep the details of that project secret. The annex will eventually serve as a new office building for state lawmakers, the governor, and the lieutenant governor. Experts we talked to say the public deserves to know how their money is being spent.
Gosh, what is going on over here now again?
It's the question those walking by the state capitol have been wondering for years.
Very mysterious, yeah. It's an 8-foot barrier. I can't even see what's in there.
And that's because they're not meant to see or really know anything about what will someday be a new office building for lawmakers and the governor. Through a series of open records requests, KCRA 3 found the state legislature's Joint Rules Committee required many of those involved in the project to sign non-disclosure agreements to keep information under lock and key. Over the past 6 years, everyone who has signed the NDA has been ordered to maintain strict confidence any documents, diagrams, information, and data in connection to the project. Otherwise, they could face legal action.
Every consultant, every employee working on the project was required to sign this non-disclosure agreement.
Dick Cowan is the former chairman of the Historic State Capitol Commission. He resigned and joined a group that sued the state over the project, partly because access to information about it is nearly impossible. Is it normal to have a non-disclosure agreement so broadly blanketing a project like this?
Absolutely not normal. The project would be planned, designed, and constructed with no sharing of information to the public.
In the dark.
In the dark is a good way to say it.
Thousands of people have promised to keep it in the dark, according to the list provided to KCRA 3 in a legislative records request. Among the 2,093 people who signed the NDAs, 5 state lawmakers, 2 people in the governor's office, and 89 other state employees. 3 of those lawmakers are still in office, including the leaders of the Joint Rules Committee overseeing the project.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Democratic Assemblymember Blanca Pacheco and State Senator John Laird. In a statement to KCRA 3, Pacheco said, in part, "While I believe transparency is critical to maintaining public trust and did not sign this agreement lightly, it was necessary in this instance to protect sensitive information related to the project's security."
Why is there an NDA that has basically blanketed this whole project?
Longtime Capitol observer and McGeorge School of Law professor Chris McCaley said, if lawmakers wanted to protect security and other sensitive information, they could have specifically spelled that out in the agreement, but they did not.
This broad sweeping non-disclosure doesn't really make much sense to me at this stage.
We're not talking national security. We're not talking nuclear codes. We're not talking, orders to troops in wartime.
David Loy is the legal director for the First Amendment Coalition.
This is public money on a public building. This is exactly the kind of thing the public has a right to know.
I don't remember signing it, but nothing seems odd to me.
Former State Senator Bob Hertzberg among the list of those who signed the NDA. Where does this come from?
I guarantee you, this was not driven by political people or staff people. It's driven by the lawyers who want to make sure that everything, all the T's were crossed, the I's were dotted, and that the legislature was appropriately protected.
Do you have any sense of who wanted them?
My sense is that Mr. Cooley, the former chairman of the Joint Rules Committee, wanted them.
Mr. Cooley, also known as former Assemblyman Ken Cooley, led and was the face of the project from 2017 until 2022. He also signed the NDA. Under his watch, and with the NDAs in place, the estimated price tag for the project ballooned from $440 million to $1.2 billion.
You have reached the voicemail of retired California State Assembly member Ken Cooley.
Over the last few weeks, I repeatedly tried calling him, emailing him, We even went to his house to get answers.
Is Ken Cooley here?
Cooley last month spotted beyond the project gates where lawmakers signed one of the first beams that will be part of the new building.
He certainly has a strong passion for this project.
Sacramento County Assemblyman Josh Hoover, who voters elected over Cooley, was there.
He was there to answer questions. He was there to answer questions with legislators. He had conversations with different members that day, talking about different aspects of the project, what it's going to look like.
It's not clear what Cooley's role is now in the project.
Whether it's him or whether it's DGS or whether it's the legislature, that we get to the bottom of these questions and actually get some answers.
And we've been trying. Last week, we told you project leaders refused to prove the millions they secretly spent on Italian stonework was the cheapest way to go. This week, we approached California Department of Justice attorneys who have been defending the legislature and the project in court. They did not want to talk. So you can't talk to us at all about this project, even though...
Not the two of us. Thank you.
Is it because you signed non-disclosure agreements?
You're reading way too much into it. We are counsel of record. You can speak with the JRC.
Meanwhile, those walking around the Capitol disturbed by the NDAs.
I believe that non-disclosure agreements lead to shady dealings. I think that the public should be aware.
I think that's completely inappropriate for a public institution, especially at the state capitol, on public grounds, to have not full transparency of what's going on. Absolutely wrong.
We reached out to former Governor Jerry Brown, who was the governor when the NDAs were established. A spokesman for him told us he had no recollection and was not aware of any direct involvement in this. We also reached out to Governor Newsom's office for just reaction to this story, and they referred us to the Joint Rules Committee, which is overseeing and leading this project.
You know, some people may remember that there's been an effort by some lawmakers to prohibit the use of these NDAs at the Capitol. I mean, you've covered not only using these for public spending, but also creating public laws, public policy. Where did that stand?
Exactly, right. And really those discussions this year mainly revolved around public policy, around proposals to prohibit them in the lawmaking process. Both of those bills that lawmakers attempted to propose were killed by Democratic legislative leaders. Now, talking to some involved in that effort to ban their use, they said they were shocked that they would ever be in place for such a public project like this one, like the Capitol Annex, especially because during the debate on those proposals, we had heard over and over again that lawmakers can't sign NDAs. Clearly, we have the documents to show that that is not the case. Later this evening, online, we will post all the documents. We'll post the list of everyone who signed the NDAs, as well as the actual NDA itself, so that you can see everything for yourself and make your decision and how you feel about this.
And help make it a little bit more transparent. So thanks for digging into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the only thing we can show at this point when it comes to this project.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.